The silence of the house. Helena woke up before the alarm, as always, in an old reflex. The room was plunged into an early, misty morning gray. She heard Ricardo's distant breathing in the hallway, already on his way out. The smell of coffee filled the kitchen like an automatic hug, and yet there was a void that didn't fit in the tidy cupboards. The impeccable table reflected his care in every tiny detail. Folded napkins, favorite mug, bread cut to the millimeter. She organized the world so as not to hear the noise within herself. The clock ticked like a heart that never rests, and the house responded with a heavy, polite silence. Ricardo entered smiling at the rush of the busy men. He kissed her forehead as if sealing a customary receipt. He said 2 words about a meeting and slow traffic. She nodded, repeating the gesture she had learned her entire life. Love, there, seemed like an old piece of furniture covered in cloth. In the hallway, the mirror showed him a tired face. It wasn't age, it was how much of herself she invested in the other. The wrinkles were maps, Atlanteans, of a silent force. Helena took a deep breath and calmly combed her hair, a calm that already bordered on nameless resignation. Ricardo's cell phone vibrated forgetfully on the sideboard. A notification flashed, begging for eyes and attention. She deviated, as always, respecting invisible boundaries. But the vibration returned, insistent, again and again. Deep down, something ancient began to move like a tide. Marta called early, the voice of a friend who knows what's between the lines. Did you sleep well? He asked, but it wasn't about sleep. Helena changed the subject with the skill of someone avoiding mirrors. He talked about the course, the cold, the house that needed sunlight, and he hung up feeling like he hadn't told anyone about himself. Again, the rain came down softly, drawing streaks on the windows. She was mesmerized by the droplets competing on the window. They seemed like little races that never ended. That's when the new vibration shook the wood of the sideboard. And Helena's heart trembled along. Without permission, he breathed slowly, like someone entering cold water. The hand went to the device in a gesture that wasn't his. There was no password, just a familiar swipe. The screen lit up like a stage about to reveal actors, and the first line of text came as a discreet blade. I'll arrive at 7, turn off the bedroom light, as we agreed. Helena reread it, thinking of random puns. Another message emerged, intimate, without asking permission. She felt the house tilt 2 degrees toward the abyss, and yet, he continued, as if he needed air. In the corner of the screen, a name she knew inside and out, Lara, the 27-year-old daughter. Blood and story of her life. The letters seemed to scream, but the house remained silent. Helena dropped the cell phone as if dropping a hot coal, and he realized that the silence had just changed its meaning. The messages. The kitchen lost its color with a loud crack that no one heard. The coffee tasted bitter like an old secret. Helena leaned against the counter to avoid falling inside. The rain now sounded like the applause of a tragedy, and the cup trembled between his fingers, unashamed to tremble. She picked up her cell phone with the obedience of duty. He opened the conversation that shone like an undue beacon. There were photos, confidences, laughter kept in bubbles, date, time, meeting, password of a parallel world. Each line was a rope pulling her to the bottom. You are the man of my life, the message said. Don't tell her, said another, in a tone of agreement. Helena read and unlearned how to breathe every second. He felt a metallic taste, iron, time, in his mouth, and the heart beat like a door in a storm. He remembered little Lara, red bows in her hair, from scraped knees and Mom, look at me. Of shy adolescence and slammed doors, the times when there was no money and there was plenty of hugs, and how he promised to protect her from the whole world. The world, however, had been indoors for years. The conversation went back months, meetings, justifications. Ricardo typed compliments she never received. The house, a silent accomplice, welcomed them without blinking. Helena felt like a tourist in her own home, a foreigner. A photo appeared, young laughter, shoulders uncovered. The room was familiar, blue curtains, antique lampshade, the lampshade she herself had chosen in the fall. Each object was a witness to a twisted story, and the whole past twisted like a wet ribbon. She thought about calling Marta and yelling into the phone, but the voice didn't come out, it was trapped in glass and water. He thought about running out into the street and asking the sky for a sign, but there were only clouds, and the long-lasting sound of rain. Then she buttoned her blouse and wiped her face firmly. The sound of the door announced Ricardo's return to the kitchen. He smiled practically, digging in his pocket for his keys. Helena lifted her cell phone, and her smile shattered in the air. His eyes flickered, without rehearsal this time, and time took a second longer than normal. Is that what I think it is? He asked in a calm voice, rough calm, bristling with contained lightning. Ricardo tried a sentence that tripped over his own feet, the syllables fell, scattered, without any meaning, and the truth stood between them, breathing loudly. Helena felt a decision grow like a rock. There was no going back, no possible bridge. She grabbed her purse, her keys, what dignity she had left. He left the coffee, the house, the mirror and the promise. And he went out into the rain, which now washed away everything that hurt. The night of confession, Helena drove aimlessly, the city lights blurred by the rain, the windshield wiper barely kept pace with the tears, the empty road seemed like a mirror of what remained inside it. Thoughts swirled, disbelief, anger, shame, everything she believed to be solid was now just shards and wind. He stopped the car in front of Marta's house, the only one left. The friend opened the door in shock, seeing Helena's devastated face. Without questions, he welcomed her into a hug. That required no explanation. Helena sobbed until she fell asleep on the sofa, her body exhausted from feeling. Meanwhile, her cell phone vibrated in her bag. It was Ricardo calling. The next morning, the sun entered without permission through the cracks. Helena woke up with the taste of iron in her mouth and the weight of reality. Marta insisted that she eat, but her stomach refused the world. Between sips of coffee, he decided he needed to hear from his daughter. It was impossible to continue without understanding how that happened. Lara answered the phone, her voice trembling, as if she had already expected it. He agreed to meet his mother in the park where they used to walk. Helena arrived first, her hands cold, her chest a civil war. When he saw his daughter approaching, he felt his body weaken, but he held her gaze. He needed to hear it, even if it was the worst version. Lara cried before she could say a word. She said it all started when Ricardo started to console her, that he said he was unhappy, needy, misunderstood. Helena listened silently, her nails digging into the palm of her hand. And you believe that? He asked, his voice breaking. Lara tried to touch her hand, but Helena backed away, too hurt. I love you, Mom, he whispered, but I love him too. The sentence tore through the air like a sharp knife, and the world fell silent. Helena stood up slowly, her legs trembling, her eyes dry. Then you take what's left of him. I'll take what's left of me. Returning to the car, my heart felt like a stone beating slowly. There was no more home. No more daughter, no more marriage, just a broken woman trying not to completely fall apart. The rain returned, fine, cold, supportive and indifferent. Helena started the engine, not knowing whether to flee or start over. That night, he parked his car in front of an old inn. He went in, asked for a room and paid with what was left in his purse. The room smelled of wet wood and forgotten sheets. He lay down with his clothes still damp and his face turned towards the ceiling. For the first time in 20 years, she slept alone and in forced peace. The following days dragged on like repeated pages. Helena didn't eat, didn't speak, she just breathed automatically. The bathroom mirror showed him an expressionless woman. The inn was small, the radio at reception played old songs, and in every note, there was a piece of what she had lost. Marta appeared in the room with a bag of clean clothes. He sat on the edge of the bed and remained silent, respecting the morning. Helena told everything, the messages, the meeting, the confession. The friend listened without interrupting, just holding her hand. When she finished, Marta said, "You're not to blame, you never were." But Helena didn't believe it. The thorn of guilt was deep. I thought I should have realized sooner that I failed as a mother and a woman, that perhaps he had become invisible inside his own house. Marta insisted that she return to the city, but she refused. There is nothing there for me. Everything I was is behind me. The money ran out in a few weeks. Helena sold her wedding ring and some old jewelry, found a job advertisement for a caregiver for the elderly. He didn't think twice, he had to live, somehow. That's how he met Dona Nair, a lucid and sweet lady. In the beginning, only silence inhabited the two, but little by little, Helena began to hear stories of love and loss. Nair spoke of her dead husband, of the longing that still hurt, and how much life insists on continuing even when everything seems to be falling apart. Helena listened and felt something light up, a tiny spark. The afternoons became colorful, the smell of cake in the oven, the sound of the old radio, discreet laughter. Helena started to smile, without even realizing it. In the mirror of Nair's house, he no longer saw only ruins. I saw someone relearning to exist without asking permission, but the past still loomed like a shadow in the hallway. At night, she dreamed of her daughter calling for her, in tears. I woke up sweating, my heart racing, between anger and longing. Motherly love was a wound that would not heal, and she wondered if it would ever be possible to forgive. One morning, while sweeping the yard, he saw a car pull up. He recognized the model before the license plate. It was Ricardo. The blood ran cold, the body paralyzed. He limped down, thinner, his eyes heavy. "We need to talk," he said, and time began to hurt again. Voices of the city. The reunion with Ricardo was quick, but enough to open old wounds. Helena saw him standing at the gate, trying to maintain the posture of a repentant man. His eyes, once arrogant, were now wells of barely concealed despair. "You disappeared," he said, as if she were to blame for disappearing. Helena took a deep breath and simply replied, "You lost me." He tried to get closer, to beg, to justify the unjustifiable. He spoke of regret, of confusion, of an unintentional mistake, but she knew, it wasn't confusion, it was choice. Helena listened to him in silence, her arms crossed and her gaze firm, and when he fell silent, she simply said, "Go away, Ricardo. Please." In the following days, the city seemed smaller. Neighbors whispered, friends avoided direct glances. At the bakery, the baker who always called her teacher pretended not to see her. It was as if she had ceased to exist, reduced to rumors. Helena learned to walk with her chin up, even when injured. Amidst the loneliness, working with Dona Nair became a shelter. Caring for her was like caring for herself. In a mirror of the future, with each tea prepared, with each story told, something was rebuilt. Helena began to understand that there was life after chaos, and that maybe, in the end, starting over was a form of revenge. One day, when he was taking Nair to the doctor, he found Marta on the street. Her friend hugged her tightly and said that everyone knew about the betrayal, but Helena was not ashamed now. She felt almost free. "Let them talk, Marta. I died for them, but I was born for myself." The sentence came out natural, firm, and even surprised herself. At night, he sat on the porch of the simple house and looked at the stars. He thought about Lara, where she was, who she was with, what bed she was sleeping in. The anger was still there, but it was accompanied by pity. The daughter had lost herself trying to fill the void of a man, and Helena swore that if she ever returned, it would not be out of hatred that she would receive her. Time began to flow more lightly. Helena learned to cook new dishes and to take care of the garden, laugh at the little things, like a child relearning how to play. But the treacherous past never sleeps for long, and a late call would change the course of his story again. The number was unknown, the voice on the other end hesitant. "It's about your husband," the man said. "He had an accident." Helena felt the ground move as in the first hours of the tragedy. "Is he alive?" he asked, and the answer came dryly, "For now." At that moment, he realized that there were still bonds that could not be broken by hatred. She hung up the phone and looked at the living room mirror. The face reflected was another, not that of the betrayed woman, but that of the survivor. I knew that somehow I had to face that last ghost, not for him, but for herself. It was time to close the cycle, even if it hurt once again. The woman who cares. The hospital smelled of ether and memories. Helena walked through the corridors with cautious steps, her heart racing. Seeing him in bed, with tubes and dark circles under his eyes, he felt something strange, pity. Not love, not anger, just the weariness of someone who has already forgiven without knowing it. Ricardo opened his eyes, surprised by her presence. "You came." He murmured weakly, trying to smile. "I came because I needed to see the end of what once destroyed me," he replied. He tried to take her hand, but she kept her distance. His words came out brokenly, a mixture of apologies and delusions, and Helena realized that she was no longer that man's hostage. He left the hospital and returned to work. Nair, with her eyes full of wisdom, noticed the change. "You saw the past, but you didn't let it swallow you up," he said. Helena smiled, and the two drank tea as the rain fell outside. "Now you're ready to really live," the elderly woman added. The following days were of serene calm. Helena became interested in night classes in the community. He taught women to read, write, and tell their own stories. It was as if each word was a brick. Rebuilding what she lost, for the first time, she felt proud of herself, until an envelope arrived, with no sender, and familiar handwriting. Inside, a photo of Lara and a note, "I need you." Helena's hands were shaking. Her heart at war again, the daughter who destroyed her now cried out for help. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Life was testing her strength. Marta appeared that afternoon and listened to everything in silence. "Are you going to help her?" she asked cautiously. "I don't know," Helena replied, looking at the horizon. "Love is a strange thing. Even when it rots, it persists." And the two of them stood there, without another word, listening to the wind. That night, Helena dreamed of Lara as a child, asking to be held. He woke up crying, hugging his pillow like a lost baby. The heart said to go, but the mind screamed, "Don't turn back." The dilemma between forgiveness and the instinct to protect suffocated her. And the dawn was long, full of ghosts and memories. When morning came, she made her decision. She grabbed her coat, put the note in her bag and left without warning. The path was the same one that led to the old house, the home of the past, but now, Helena was different. She wasn't running away, she was confronting, and deep in his chest, he knew he was about to rewrite his story. The return of the past, the gate of the old house still creaked the same way. Helena stood before him, her heart pounding with memories. The garden was unkempt, the flowers dead, the grass tall. It was as if time had stopped along with love. She took a deep breath before ringing the doorbell. Lara opened the door with fear written all over her face. The slightly rounded belly revealed the pregnancy. The eyes, once alive, were drowned in regret. "I knew you would come," he said, crying. Helena simply replied, "I didn't come for him. I came for you." He entered slowly, observing every corner as if he were stepping on broken glass, the stained sofa, the crooked picture, the smell of abandonment. Everything was a reflection of the ruin Ricardo had left behind. Lara spoke quickly, between sobs and confessions. "He left me, Mom. He went off with someone else. I have no one." Helena listened to her, but the old pain still burned. Each word of the daughter was a knife and a cure at the same time. Lara said that the baby's father was Ricardo, and cried harder, "I deserve your hate, but I can't stand living like this anymore." Helena felt the ground shake. Hell had another circle. For a moment, I wanted to scream, run away, disappear again, but her hand moved on its own and touched her daughter's face. "You made terrible choices, Lara, but you're still my daughter." The girl threw herself into his arms, and they both cried silently. It wasn't forgiveness yet, it was just the first step toward peace. Helena took Lara to her simple house, where she lived with Dona Nair. The old lady welcomed them with tenderness and hot tea. "Family is something that God dismantles and we try to put back together again," he said. The two of them were silent, absorbing the bitter truth. That night, they slept together, as mother and daughter for the first time in years. During the following days, Helena cared for Lara gently. She made soups, attended consultations, and with each gesture, she healed a little of herself, but the fear still lived there, hidden behind the recent affection. And Ricardo's name returned as a ghost in his nightly dreams. The past insisted on not dying, even when everything called for a new beginning. Ricardo's remains. The call came on an afternoon with an iron-colored sky. A hospital nurse announced, "Your ex-husband is hospitalized, in serious condition." Helena stood still, the phone slipping through her fingers. For a moment, he considered ignoring it, letting fate do its work, but something in her breast, perhaps love, perhaps pity, made her say, "I'll come over." In the hospital, the smell of alcohol and loneliness filled the air. Ricardo was unrecognizable, thin, tired, his skin pale as paper. He tried to speak, but coughed instead of words. The eyes sought him as if seeking redemption. "Helena. Forgive me. I destroyed everything that was good in me." She approached slowly, holding back tears. "I'm not here to console you, Ricardo. I'm here to finish what you started." He cried, with the weakness of someone who finally understands the damage. He said that Lara needed love, that her son would be the only link left. Helena just nodded, not for him, but for herself. When he left the room, he felt an immense weight lift off his shoulders. Outside, the cold wind made her realize she was alive. Marta was waiting for her in the car, with teary eyes and a discreet smile. "Is it over?" he asked. "No," Helena replied. Now it's going to start. In the days that followed, he devoted himself entirely to Lara. The two resumed old conversations, shy laughter, and even confessions. Helena talked about the fears she felt her whole life. Lara spoke about the guilt, emptiness, and manipulation she suffered. Amidst tears and hugs, mother and daughter began to rebuild themselves. One night, while they were embroidering baby clothes, the phone rang. It was the hospital. He didn't make it. The silence that followed was profound, almost sacred. Helena hung up slowly and looked at Lara. "He's gone," he simply said, and the daughter cried in her mother's arms. In the following days, the two went to the funeral together. There was no crowd, just the priest, Marta, and Dona Nair. The coffin was lowered slowly, and the wind lifted dry leaves. Helena threw a flower and whispered, "You killed me. But you taught me how to live." And there, for the first time, she felt true forgiveness. On the way back, Lara rested her head on her mother's shoulder. "What do we do now?" she asked, still trembling. Helena responded, looking at the horizon, "We'll start over. That's all." And for the first time in years, the sun seemed to rise again, from within. The meeting of the two, the days following the burial were filled with silence and restrained breathing. Helena watched Lara walk around the house, slowly, carrying the weight of guilt. The young girl avoided her mother's gaze, as if she feared the reflection of her own shame. But Helena no longer saw just the daughter who betrayed her, but the woman who was also hurt. Both had been victims of the same man, and now it remained to heal the ruins. That morning, the sun flooded into the room. For the first time in weeks, Lara sewed a blue blanket for the baby while Helena made coffee. The smell of bread and the sound of the kettle created an almost peaceful scene. "Have you always wanted a grandchild?" Lara asked. Trying to break the silence, Helena smiled with sad sweetness. "I always wanted a second chance." They both laughed, for the first time in a long time. It was a shy, nervous laugh, but real, like lightning splitting a cloudy sky. The conversation flowed, mixing memories and regrets. Lara confessed that she often wanted to ask for help, but fear prevented her. "He made me believe you didn't love me anymore, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. Helena hugged her, feeling her daughter's body tremble in her arms. "I loved you all the time, even when it hurt so much to remember you," he whispered. The tears came shamelessly, pure, liberating. In that embrace, two women found each other after years of loss. And love, still wounded, began to breathe again. In the days that followed, Helena became her daughter's rock. She cared for the pregnancy with the same zeal as someone rebuilding a temple. She made teas, prepared soups and talked about the fears and strengths of motherhood. Lara, in turn, saw in her mother the woman she dreamed of being. Strong, whole, free, and he promised never to repeat the mistakes that destroyed the past. One night, Marta visited the two with a cornmeal cake in her hands. "This house smells of life again," he said smiling. Helena replied, "This time, I won't let the darkness in." Lara added, "Neither do I." And the three toasted with coffee and hope. It was the beginning of a new story, slow but steady. As the moon rose in the sky, Helena looked at the horizon. He thought of Ricardo, but not with hate, with compassion. He left taking the worst part of it, and in return, he left the lesson. The past no longer held her back. It was just a distant memory. Now, the future was in her hands, and in her daughter's hand. The weight of forgiveness. The 8th month of pregnancy arrived with the summer heat. Lara slept badly, tired, and Helena was divided between work and care. Even exhausted, there was a new serenity in her gestures. The two lived in harmony, but they knew that forgiveness was still fragile. It was a newly built bridge over the abyss of pain. One morning, Lara found the notebook Helena had been writing in at night. The pages were full of memories, confessions and outbursts. She read a passage silently. "Forgiving is not forgetting. It is surviving the memory." The tears came before I could stop them, and when her mother appeared at the door, Lara simply whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Helena approached and hugged her from behind, resting her hands on her belly. "This boy will be born into a different world than ours, daughter." "Yes," Lara replied. "In a world where women don't have to keep quiet." The baby moved, and they both smiled, feeling life pulse between their hands. It was as if love had finally overcome the cycle of pain. That afternoon, Helena went to the community school she helped maintain. she spoke to a group of women about new beginnings and courage. He said that each of them carried an invisible force, waiting to be awakened. When he finished, soft applause filled the small hall. She felt she was fulfilling a greater purpose. At night, Lara felt the first contractions. Helena maintained the calm that life taught her through suffering. She got up, packed her bag and held her daughter's hand. In the hospital, time passed at the pace of breathing and hope, and when the baby's cry echoed, Helena cried along with it. For 3 lives reborn. Holding his grandson in his arms, he saw in him the new beginning he had been waiting for. "Welcome, little one," he whispered. "You were born from what was left of love." Lara, still weak, looked at her mother with silent gratitude. "He'll grow up hearing the truth, Mom. All of it." Helena smiled, and learning that forgiveness is stronger than pain. Back home, the baby's room smelled of milk and the future. Helena sat in the armchair, watching her grandson sleep. Life regained color, sound, and smell, a gentle symphony of new beginnings. She finally understood that pain was just the first chapter of healing, and he promised never to forget who he became because of her. Shadows of the past, the weeks after the baby was born were filled with light and silence. Helena spent hours rocking little Gabriel, breathing peace. But at night, when everyone was asleep, the shadows would whisper again. The past seeped into his dreams, reminding him of old wounds. And the heart, although healed, beat between memory and fear. One rainy morning, she woke up to the sound of the wind. The rocking of the cradle seemed to be in time with the ticking of the clock. Helena sat at the table and opened the notebook where she was writing. The words flowed like a rant and a prayer. "I forgive him. Not because he deserves it, but because I deserve peace." Tears fell discreetly onto the paper. Mixing ink and truth, she wrote about the girl she was, the woman who was lost and the one who was reborn, about guilt, sick love, the fear of growing old alone. Each line was a brick in the fortress she was rebuilding within herself, and when he finished, he realized he wasn't shaking anymore. The next morning, Marta came to visit her with a proud smile. "You look like a different person, Helena," he said. "Lighter." "It's just that I let the past sleep outside the house," he replied smiling. Marta laughed, then locked the door tightly. "Friend. He's persistent." The two embraced with the complicity of those who had won together. Meanwhile, Lara was adapting to motherhood. Still insecure, sometimes she cried in secret, fearing that she would repeat her mother's mistakes. Helena watched her with tenderness and newfound wisdom. "Making mistakes is part of life, daughter. What matters is what we do after the mistake." These words became the new mantra of the house. One night the phone rang, unknown number. It was from the hospital. They wanted Helena to go and sign papers about Ricardo. His body was awaiting release, and no one else had appeared. Helena sighed deeply, the weight of the past knocking on the door once again. "I'm going," he said, and hung up with the serenity of someone who knows their own way. In the hospital, the cold in the corridor was the same as before. The nurse led her to the freezing cold morgue room. The body was covered, motionless, unrecognizable. Helena looked one last time and whispered, "Goodbye, Ricardo." Finally, goodbye. When he left there, the air seemed lighter, the world, brighter. Back home, he found Lara asleep with Gabriel in her arms. The scene made her smile and cry at the same time. Life had taken its turns, and there was the reason for it all. Helena realized that she no longer carried anger or pain, just gratitude for the new beginning that was born from the end. The last conversation. A few days later, Helena returned to the cemetery. She carried white flowers and the notebook where she recorded the entire journey. The sun was low, gilding the crosses and fallen leaves. She knelt before the simple headstone and placed the flowers. Then he opened the notebook and began to read aloud. "You broke me, Ricardo. But it was by breaking me that I discovered I was made of stone, not glass. You tried to dim my shine, but you taught me to turn on my own light." The words echoed softly, without rancor, just truth. "Today, I don't hate you. I just don't love you anymore. And that's enough." He closed the notebook, hot tears slowly streaming down his face. A light breeze blew, and she felt as if the past had truly departed. He stood there for a few minutes, looking at the orange horizon. There was no sadness, just a quiet emptiness, the space of forgiveness. In his coat pocket, he found a small baby shoe. He smiled. Life always found a way to be reborn. When he returned home, he found Marta and Lara on the porch. They laughed, the baby in their arms, the smell of coffee and cake in the air. Helena watched before entering, savoring the moment. Marta saw her and shouted, "You took too long, woman. The coffee is getting cold." "I've left the past behind," she replied, smiling. At night, when everyone was asleep, Helena sat on Gabriel's crib. He watched the little boy breathe calmly and thought about everything he had experienced. "One day, you will hear my story," he whispered, "and you will learn that no pain lasts forever." She kissed his forehead and, for the first time, she felt complete. The clock struck midnight when he closed his eyes. In the window, the moon illuminated the room with silent tenderness. The sound of the wind seemed to whisper, "Now it's your turn to live." Helena smiled, her heart light, free, whole, and the past, that persistent ghost, finally lay to rest. The Renaissance, months have passed since the final goodbye to Ricardo. The house now breathed a different air, light, warm, full of life. Gabriel crawled across the wooden floor, laughing. Lara had gone back to school and seemed more confident and in control of herself, and Helena, for the first time, felt proud of the woman she saw in the mirror. At the neighborhood community school, she began volunteering as a tutor. Women of all ages came to hear her stories and advice. Some cried. Some laughed, but they all came out different. Helena talked about self-love, courage and starting over. "You are not what you lost. You are what you survived," he said. Little by little, the small room became a refuge. There, wounded women found strength in each other. Helena taught them to read and write, but above all, to love each other. Lara helped by taking care of the children, while Marta organized the meetings. That unlikely trio had become a symbol of unity and hope. One day, a student asked, "Teacher, how did you manage to forgive so much?" Helena stopped, thoughtful, and replied with a calm smile, "Forgiving isn't forgetting what they did. It's remembering without letting it hurt." The room fell silent. Those words were healing and revelation. Gabriel grew up surrounded by affection, between stories and hugs. Helena saw him as a miracle that arose from the ashes of the past. He was living proof that life persists, even after tragedy. On sunny afternoons, she would take him to the square and tell him stories. The boy laughed, and his laughter was the most beautiful sound she knew. One of those afternoons, Helena ran into an old colleague. The woman looked at her in surprise. "You look different, Helena. You look happy." And she replied without hesitation, "It's just that I've learned not to measure myself by what I've lost." The friend smiled, moved, and said, "You won, you know." Helena thought for a moment and added, "No. I started over." The school's fame spread throughout the city. Local newspapers published articles about the Women of Ricamico project. Companies started helping, and registrations doubled. Helena saw, with tears in her eyes, the transformation she was causing. From victim, she had become a beacon. One night at an event, Marta went up on stage and said, "This woman here taught me that strength is not about never falling, it's getting up when the ground seems to no longer exist." Helena cried, emotionally, and the audience gave a standing ovation. The old pain was now applause and purpose. The new house, Helena's house, was now a home full of female voices. Women from the project came to visit her, share victories and achievements. There was the smell of cake, flowers in the windows, and laughter throughout the rooms. The suffering had become a distant memory. With each new day, she felt her heart fill with peace. Lara now worked as a social worker. He treated women who were going through the same pain he once felt. "You are my biggest inspiration, Mom," he said proudly. Helena smiled, touching her daughter's face. "You are proof that love is reborn." Gabriel, the little one, ran around the room screaming with joy. One Sunday afternoon, Helena looked at the garden and had an idea. He called all the women at the school and proposed, "Let's build a new headquarters." With the help of the community, the dream took shape. Months later, the Aurora Center, a space for new beginnings, on the facade. A hand-painted phrase, "Strength is born from pain." The inauguration was a landmark in the city. Helena cut the ribbon with trembling hands and teary eyes. Marta and Lara were beside him, smiling with pride. "You did the impossible, Helena," said Marta. "No. I just transformed what destroyed me into something that builds me up," he replied. Inside the center, there were photos, books and stories of overcoming. Helena made a point of including her own story. No shame, it's important to remember, he said. Because to forget is to stop growing. The women applauded her, and the name Aurora shone on the wall. It was the symbolic dawn of a new era, not just for her, but for many. That night, back on the balcony, Helena watched the sunset. Gabriel slept on her lap, and the wind carried the scent of the future. The reddish sky was reflected in the tears that flowed silently. "Thank you, God," he murmured, "for getting me through hell and still believing in heaven." And her heart responded with the serenity of someone who had finally found herself. The last look. Time passed with the delicacy of peaceful mornings. The days of pain are behind us, like leaves of a forgotten autumn. Helena was now walking slowly through the school garden, the Aurora Center. The flowers were in full spring, coloring the air with the scent of hope. Women laughed in the distance, children played, and life pulsed again. She sat on a wooden bench, watching Gabriel run through the trees. The boy grew up curious, free, full of light. Lara called him my little miracle, and Helena saw him as a symbol of forgiveness. As the wind played with the grandmother's white hair, a serene peace enveloped her. This was the moment she had waited her entire life for, the moment of being whole. Marta arrived with a basket of bread and 2 steaming cups of coffee. He sat down beside her and for a moment they were silent, just listening to the world. "Did you notice?" Marta said softly. "Nothing hurts anymore." Helena smiled, looking at the golden horizon. "It's because I learned not to fight what happened, and now?" asked the friend. "What comes after so much pain?" Helena took a deep breath, her gaze lost in the orange-tinted sky. "Now comes the lightness, Marta. The lightness of knowing that I survived." The two looked at each other, and time seemed to stop between that shared smile. The sun was slowly setting, and the gentle warmth caressed their faces. It was as if the universe said, "You've arrived, Helena. Finally." Back home, Helena found Lara preparing dinner. Gabriel was drawing on the table, concentrating, doodling a woman with a huge heart. "It's you, Grandma," he said proudly, holding up the drawing. Helena laughed and hugged him tightly, smelling the sweet scent of childhood. "Keep this," he said, "for when you grow up and I'm history." At night, lying in bed, she opened her old notebook. The yellowed pages still held the echoes of ancient pain, but now, every word felt like part of a map that had brought her here. At the end, he wrote slowly, "I was betrayed, humiliated, and forgotten. But in the end, I saved myself." He closed the notebook and left it on the nightstand. Next to an old photo, it was her, Ricardo and Lara, still young, still whole. Helena looked for a few seconds and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me the value of being free." Then he turned off the light, his heart at peace, his spirit at peace. Outside, the light wind lulled the night like a lullaby. The next morning, the sun rose slowly, gilding the walls of the house. Lara entered the room with Gabriel in her arms, calling softly, "Mom." Helena slept, a calm smile on her face, as if she had finally rested. Lara cried, but it was a sweet cry, of gratitude and pride. Helena had departed in peace, and left the world stronger than she found it. Years later, the Aurora Center flourished in several cities. There, women found shelter, words, and courage to start over. At the main entrance, a golden plaque read, "Inspired by the story of Helena, the woman whose husband exchanged for his own daughter, but that he chose, forgave himself and transformed pain into hope." Gabriel, now a teenager, used to visit the school garden. He sat on the same bench where his grandmother once dreamed of a better world, and every time the wind blew through the trees, he swore he heard her voice, "Life can break you, my little one. But it's up to you to decide whether you stay in pieces or become art." And so, Helena's legacy lived on, not just on walls and memories, but in every woman who learned to say, "I deserve to start over." Even when everything seems to fall apart, the woman who chooses to get up makes the world turn again. Helena didn't just survive, she turned the impossible into freedom.